All right, welcome back. As always, it's Mr. Jones, and I'm here. It's episode 5 of our math learning series. And today we're going to talk about how to calculate the volume of a rectangular prism. So volume is the amount of three-dimensional space an object takes up. So unlike area, which is the amount of space a 2D shape takes up, like a flat rectangle or square, volume is calculating three-dimensional space, so it has to be a 3D shape, like a rectangular prism. It's expressed in units cubed. An example of a unit could be centimeters or meters. Usually we deal with centimeters. The formula is volume equals length times width times height. And the times height piece is what makes it different from our area formula, which would be just volume equals length times width, or pardon me, area equals length times width. Now, having said that, the formula for volume can also be expressed as volume equals area times height, because area is the same as length times width. This formula is going to be explained on the next slide. So here's an example of a rectangular prism made of centimeter cubes that has been broken down into layers. We can see that each layer has the dimensions of 5 by 4, and that there are 4 layers altogether. So again, this gives us that expression of length times width times height to express the volume. So again, you can see the entire shape. They've broken it down into the different layers of cubes. So you can see how the area of this top part would be 5 times 4. Right, and that's going to give us 20 centimeters. But because it's three-dimensional, we also have to take into account the layers, which in this case is 4. So we can add all of that up, or we could multiply 20 times 4, and it's going to give us that 80 centimeters cubed. In this example, the rectangular prism isn't divided into centimeter cubes like the previous slide, or layers, but we can still solve it using the formula we learned. So again, that formula is volume equals length times width times height. And for this specific rectangle, we can call that 12 centimeters times 5 centimeters times 8 centimeters. So to complete this, we need to break it up into smaller equations. It becomes really difficult to try and multiply 3 numbers together, but when we sort of chunk it, it becomes a lot simpler. So the first thing we do is we can put brackets around the smaller of the 2 equations and calculate that expression. The reason I like to put the brackets around the smaller part, one, because it's an easy way of starting off our overall calculation, and 2, it helps us to remember that once this is calculated, there's no going back to 5 centimeters or 8 centimeters. Sometimes we're tempted to multiply these together, and then we might try and do 8 times 12 or 5 times 12. We sort of do some funny things sometimes. So putting the brackets reminds us that once we get this answer, as we'll show on the next slide, there's no going back to this 5 or 8. The next calculation has to be the answer or the product of this multiplication expression. So in this case, 40 centimeters squared. So next we take our answer from that first part and we're going to multiply it by the remaining number. So in this case, that remaining number is 12. So again, we had in the brackets 8 times 5. I've left the answer in the brackets as a bit of a reminder, and that needs to be multiplied by 12. I've included 2 methods here just as a sort of refresher from some of our multiplication work. So I've got the box method. This part of it is optional. I left it just so that it used the regular form we use. But I've also shown all of you how to just do it with 2 boxes instead of the 4. Because obviously anything times 0 is just going to give you 0. So this side doesn't add anything to our equation. So again, 40 times 10 is 400. 40 times 2 is 80. When we add those up, we get 480 centimeters cubed. On the flip side here, same idea, 40 times 12. So again, we would do 0 times 2 is 0, 4 times 2 is 8. Then we flip it down, we have to add our placeholder 0. 0 times 1 is 0, 4 times 1 is 4. And then when we add these together, we get 480 centimeters cubed. Now something sort of interesting happens here. Our 40 centimeters is already squared because when you multiply centimeters by centimeters, you get centimeters squared. And when we multiply centimeters squared by centimeters, we get centimeters cubed. So again, that's something we've talked about a little bit already, but sometimes it's good to have a reminder of why it's been written out that way. All right, so I hope this video helps a little bit as a good review for how to calculate the volume of a rectangular prism. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed doing some math.